I built the $210 million pipeline with 12,407 lines of code. They called it Meridian. The day I filed for leave to sit with my mother after her double lung surgery, a text from the CEO's daughter popped across my screen. No time for family. We need you here. I stared at the Meridian console, at the tiny gray toggle I had tucked into the UI a year ago and called witness mode. They didn't know it recorded more than transactions. It captured the small, human moments that proved intent. My name is Evelyn Hart. On that rain-hung Tuesday morning, the downtown Seattle office felt like a sealed capsule. The building's HVAC held the floor at a precise 60 degrees F, and the soft industrial vibration ran up through my heels and into my teeth. The carpet was a dull slate that swallowed sound, so the place always felt like an operating theater. The only noises were key taps, a far-off espresso machine that burned coffee like a ritual, and the occasional hiss of the server room. My desk was a clean plane of brushed aluminum and two widescreen monitors that glowed like calm oceans. I was head of lifecycle intelligence. Meridian was my reef. I'd spent 18 months coaxing 23 separate systems into a single, unforgiving truth. Salesforce, billing, ad platforms, support logs, each was a tiny island I stitched into a continental map of money and behavior. Meridian predicted closing probabilities by parsing 43 behavioral signals. It didn't care for egos or PR, it just told the pattern. It had turned the finance slides from opinion into law. The board liked law. The board liked winners. Which is why my PTO requests, 5 days, caregiver, attached surgeon's note, should have vanished into HR and been approved. Instead, on the second tick after I submitted it, David Kane, our chief of staff, pinged me. David types like a weather report. Evelyn, PTO flagged, needs special handling. Routing to Leela Hart. Leela Hart. The name landed like a stone. Leela had no corporate title. Officially, she was on sabbatical, working on brand initiatives. Unofficially, she was a placeholder in every meeting with clout enough to bend product roadmaps, marketing spends, and personnel decisions. She'd grown up in the corner office. People called her the heiress, the golden advisory. She'd never written a line of code. She'd never had to reconcile a bank feed at 2 a.m. Yet apparently, my right to keep my mother company for a week hinged on a woman who treated policy like an accessory. At 9:17 a.m., the message came through. Her avatar was a glossy portrait, high cheekbones, identical smile, and the text was clean as a scalpel. No PTO. We're pushing Q4 hard. Team needs you. Be a player. In that tiny sentence, she flattened everything that mattered about me into a single childish tack. Be a player. The phrase wasn't command alone. It was an erasure. My reply was precise. Doesn't our caregiver policy cover documented family medical leave? I attached the surgeon's note again. There was a pause, long enough for my heart to measure itself, and then an emoji reaction, the dismissive shoulder shrug, the digital equivalent of being waved away. I tasted metal in my mouth. The ambient office sound retreated the way it does right before something important happens. I looked to Meridian. On my primary monitor, the pipeline map pulsed like a living organism. ETL streams, scoring models, confidence intervals, a $210 million active pipeline mapped in green and amber. My hands hovered above the keyboard. On the upper right of the UI, almost invisible against the dark theme, was witness mode, disabled. My thumb found the small brushed metal USB I kept in the drawer, my insurance against bad actors, and I thought through the sequence I'd rehearsed on lonely nights. A second alert arrived. Meridian Prod, repository access change, new observer, ocean key. It wasn't an engineer account. It wasn't in our directory. Observer access doesn't change code, but it sees everything, every test, every commit, every secret. It wasn't an accident, a shadow account attached to our crown jewels. Leela had the reach to press the right buttons from the outside. She had the clout to get Ocean Key whitelisted by people who were terrified to ask why. There are things you do because they're necessary, and things you do because they announce that necessity. I opened my terminal, authenticated with the passphrase only I knew, and spun an offline emergency key to a thumb drive. Command executed. The progress bar crawled and then finished. I buried the drive in a metal tray under paper clips and company swag, a small, dumb burial with a godlike purpose. I switched back to Slack and used a capture tool that embedded network metadata into the image file. I snapped Leela's message, my question, and her emoji. The image contained IP addresses, device fingerprints, timestamps, more than pixels. It was the first thread of proof. I encrypted it and stashed it in a hidden volume. If they wanted to play this game, I'd let the machine take the stand. At 11:45 a.m., there was the summon. War room, 2 p.m. Leela's tone wasn't a request. It was a summons. The war room sat behind a glass wall 2 floors up, a taut rectangle of white table and black chairs designed for executions. She was already there, back to the vista of overcast Puget Sound, hair pulled into a severe knot, and wearing the kind of dress that cost more than most of us earn in a year. She didn't turn as I entered. The door sighed shut. The room smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and cold power. "Cancel your PTO," she said, voice flat. "We can't afford distractions." She still hadn't looked at me. I set my laptop on the table, flicked to HR policy, and turned the screen to her. Section 4.2, Extended Caregiver Leave. The clause was highlighted in fluorescent yellow. "This is covered," I said. "Doctor's note enclosed." Leela's laugh was a thin knife. "Policy is for the little people," she answered. "At our level, flexibility matters. You understand how business works." She tapped her phone, and a spreadsheet popped into view on my machine. 9 deals, 9 targets, numbers in the high 90s where Meridian had them in the mid-50s. The sum read $64.4 million. Her hand hovered near the phone screen like a conductor ready to cut the orchestra. "Move those into commit by Friday. Meridian is too conservative. Nudge them. You can make the system cooperate." It was an ask that tasted like fraud. I felt the ancient, honest part of me tighten up. I don't nudge numbers. Meridian is an auditable system. If we fudge data, we're not forecasting, we're forging. Her eyes narrowed. For the first time, she looked at me, and I saw something in the look that wasn't merely entitlement. It was calculation. Her phone buzzed, and a small notification flashed. Ocean Key LLC, payment received. The little things snapped into place. She thought I was small. She thought I could be slapped down with PR-friendly language and no consequences. She didn't know about witness mode. She didn't know Meridian remembered pain as well as profit. I slid my fingers to the 3-key combination I'd ingrained into my muscle memory months ago. No theatrics, no visible effect, just a whisper to a process sleeping in a rack across town. Blue thread, awake. The war room's glass walls reflected light into thin blades. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a calendar invite. All hands, 3:30 p.m. Mandatory. I closed my laptop and rose. The clean white table a cold altar. The rest of my day would be cruel theater. But if you want to steal a machine that speaks truth, you should probably know it has a tongue of its own. I walked out into the corridor and thought of my mother's phone number, the surgeon's note on my desktop, and the tiny USB in the paperclip box at my desk. I thought about what I built and what it meant to let it be owned by people who traded in shadows. I took a breath that tasted like rain and began to walk back to my desk. The all-hands felt less like a meeting and more like a trial. 300 employees packed into the atrium, steel, glass, and ambition stacked into one echoing box of anxiety. The Meridian logo pulsed on the giant LED screen behind the CEO's podium, predicting tomorrow, today. I'd written that tagline back when I still believed in the we part of this company. CEO Richard Hart, the patriarch of the empire, took the stage at exactly 3:30 p.m. He was every inch the legend they sold in Forbes spreads. Silver hair, tailored charcoal suit, calm voice that could make bad news sound like a market opportunity. Beside him stood Leela, his daughter. She wasn't smiling this time. She didn't need to. Her presence alone told everyone which direction the wind would blow. Richard began with charm, talking numbers, milestones, our incredible team. Then, a beat too early, Leela stepped forward, her hand resting on the podium as if claiming it. "I want to recognize someone special," she said, eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. "Evelyn Hart, our lead systems engineer. She's done incredible work on Meridian. Her algorithms are why we've just secured the Blue Ridge Telecom partnership. Projected value, $58 million. Applause. Loud, fake, obedient. But every pulse of clapping hit like static in my ears. Blue Ridge wasn't secured. Meridian's probability forecast was at 46%. The deal hadn't even entered the final verification stage. The lie was public now, and it had my name glued to it. Richard smiled, looking almost proud. "Outstanding work, Evelyn," he said. "Then, in front of everyone, you'll be taking point on the handover. No leaves, no delays." A ripple of polite laughter. I felt my pulse crawl up my neck. Leela met my gaze across the room, cool, unblinking, victorious. In that moment, the humiliation wasn't the worst part. It was the realization that she wasn't improvising. This was planned. She was building a narrative where I was both the genius and the scapegoat. Perfect for when the numbers crashed. After the applause died, I slipped out into the corridor. The HR director, Melissa, caught up to me in the corridor. She was younger, nervous, the kind of person who whispered rules rather than enforced them. "Evelyn," she said softly, glancing around, "I saw your PTO request. I'm sorry, it's out of my hands." "Out of your hands," I repeated, "or out of Leela's?" She winced. You didn't hear this from me, but the family's under pressure. The board wants Q4 to show unreal growth before the merger talks with Stratus Corp. Leela is proving she can lead. By rewriting numbers? Melissa's silence was answer enough. Just be careful, she whispered. They're watching. I walked away before my anger said something my career couldn't survive. By the time I reached my desk, witness mode had done its job. The system had captured the full live stream of the all hands, audio, video, transcripts, all tied to the metadata of Leela's fake Blue Ridge announcement. It had even flagged the discrepancy between her claim and Meridian's back-end confidence scores. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need applause, just timestamps. I opened the secure terminal. A new log appeared on the dark screen. Witness event 014. Public disclosure, variance detected. Confidence interval, mismatch, 46% reported as 97%. User reference, L. Hart. The system didn't accuse, it just remembered. I smiled for the first time that day. At 7:10 p.m., the office emptied into the city like bees fleeing smoke. Only the neon hum of servers kept me company. Through the glass, Seattle looked like a wet circuit board, highways glinting, windows flickering. I texted my mom. Still working, we'll call soon, don't worry, I'm okay. She sent back a heart emoji and a photo from her hospital bed. Her hair was thin, her smile still stubborn. Guilt pressed at my ribs like a weight I couldn't lift. Then the door clicked. Footsteps. Leela's reflection appeared in the glass behind me. Perfect posture, red lipstick catching the light. You're still here, she said, voice calm, curious. Most people leave when the lights start humming. Most people don't own what I built, I replied without turning. She circled me slowly, like a cat around prey. Richard's impressed with you, the board too. But you have to understand something, Evelyn. Loyalty is currency here. If you make the company look weak, I make myself look weak. And that doesn't end well for anyone. I didn't make you lie to 300 people. Her eyes flickered. It's not a lie if the outcome changes later. We'll close Blue Ridge. Then it becomes truth. I turned to face her. You can't manipulate data into reality, Leela. That's not how prediction works. She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's exactly how power works. And just like that, she was gone. The echo of her heels faded down the hall, leaving only the server's heartbeat and my fury. At 9:04 p.m., I packed my laptop into my bag and slid the tiny USB clip from the paperclip box into my coat pocket. I felt heavier now, like holding a detonator wrapped in plastic. Inside it sat Meridian's heartbeat, the hidden logs and every line of evidence I'd ever need if the company tried to bury me. As I rode the elevator down, a new alert buzzed on my phone. Unknown login detected. Witness mode remote access, 9:03 p.m. I froze. Someone was already inside the system. The elevator doors opened into the dim parking garage, the sound of rain echoing like static against the concrete. I ran a quick trace on my phone. The access was internal. The source? CEO OfficeNet. So she hadn't wasted time. She was trying to erase what I had. I stared out at the drizzle coating my car windshield. If she thought she could delete the truth, she had no idea that witness mode was more than a feature. It was distributed, fragmented across backups, local caches, offline nodes, hidden in places even the company didn't know existed. Meridian couldn't forget, and soon, neither would the board. I started the engine and whispered to myself, let's play, princess. The next morning began with thunder. Not outside, but inside the building. The kind of pressure you can feel in your teeth before you even step off the elevator. Every screen on the engineering floor was alive, lines of red text scrolling like a heartbeat in panic mode. People huddled around monitors, voices low and sharp, coffee forgotten, eyes wide. Meridian had triggered a level 3 anomaly. That had never happened before. Evelyn, you seeing this? Called Jonah, one of my data leads, face pale under the cold light. I nodded without speaking and went straight to my terminal. The logs were bloated, millions of lines, half of them flagged as corrupted, but not corrupted by accident, corrupted by design. Someone had entered witness mode's internal cache and tried to rewrite timestamps. They didn't know what they were touching. The system's integrity engine detected the intrusion instantly and locked down, a full self-protective rollback. And in that instant, I knew exactly who it was. The CEO's daughter had tried to erase me. She had just told the system I existed too clearly to ever vanish again. Richard's office door was already shut when I arrived on the top floor, but through the glass wall I could see them. Richard at his desk, Leela beside him, both looking at a monitor I knew too well. My heart drummed a rhythm that matched the blinking cursor on my phone. I hit record before opening the door. Sir, I said evenly, stepping inside, we've got a system integrity breach on Meridian. Someone accessed protected memory from an admin-level device linked to your office network. Leela didn't flinch. It's being handled, she said smoothly, as if her words could rewrite reality again. Handled by whom? I asked. Because if the breach came from your subnet, that means policy violation, federal compliance breach, and possibly wire fraud if data was altered. Richard looked between us like a man balancing two sticks of dynamite. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I trust you'll keep this internal. We don't need panic." The words, "we don't need panic," were corporate for "bury it." I stood still. "Sir, Meridian rolled back to preserve data integrity, but it's also created a forensic snapshot. Every access, every keystroke, documented." Leela's eyes darkened. "So?" she asked. "So," I said, "if anyone tried to delete or alter financial metrics, that attempt is now permanently tied to their user fingerprint." The silence was dense enough to touch. I watched Leela's throat tighten as she forced a smile. "Then I suppose you should make sure that fingerprint stays internal too," she said, voice coated in venom, "for everyone's sake." I didn't answer, because right then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jonah. "Check your mirror node, someone cloned the repo." My stomach turned to stone. Mirror node. That was the secondary backup server in Portland, the one I'd hidden in plain sight under a generic project name, meant only for my use in case of emergency. No one should have known about it. Unless witness mode had called out to its siblings automatically. Unless the system was smarter than even I had planned. I looked at Leela again, at her perfectly manicured hand resting on the CEO's desk, and felt something sharp and clean click into place inside me, the kind of resolve you can't unmake. "Understood," I said finally. "I'll keep things internal." Then I left. Down in the parking lot, rain fell like static on steel. I climbed into my car, connected my laptop to my hotspot, and accessed the Portland node. It had duplicated the entire chain of events, plus one new entry that hadn't existed before. Witness Event 015, unauthorized credential clone. Origin, L.Heart device. Action, access denied. I exhaled. The system had defended itself. It had caught her hand in the act and slammed the door shut. I looked out across the gray skyline and whispered, "Good girl." Meridian was alive in its own way. It protected data the way the human body protects a wound, with fever, violence, and memory. And now it was angry. By noon, the official narrative had already shifted. The company sent an internal memo blaming a minor cloud synchronization issue for the temporary rollback. Leela's name wasn't mentioned, but the engineers weren't stupid. They saw the digital fingerprints too. They knew whose subnet had tripped the alarms. Rumors spread like wildfire through the Slack channels. Whispers about a cover-up, about Leela's meltdown, about the heiress hacking the vault. HR started sending reminders about respectful communication. The whole place smelled of panic under a coat of perfume. I spent the afternoon in controlled silence, combing through server logs, collecting snapshots, encrypting them 3 different ways. At 5 o'clock, Jonah leaned on the edge of my desk. "You're sitting on a bomb, aren't you?" he said quietly. I looked up at him. "No," I said. "I built one. Now I'm deciding when to let it go off." He gave a grim nod. "You're going to take her down." "Not yet," I said. "First, I need the board to hear her version of truth next to Meridian's version." That night, I drove out to Alki Beach, parked facing the black water, and opened my laptop one more time. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled like cold metal and seaweed. I pulled up Witness Mode's main interface. The blue graph of the system's activity pulsed like a heart monitor. I typed a single command. "Export all to board review package." The progress bar crawled across the screen, slow, deliberate, like justice learning to walk. I thought of my mother lying in her hospital bed, tubes and monitors all around her, her voice steady the night before when she told me, "You don't let people like that write your story, baby. You write theirs." The export finished with a soft chime. I sat back, staring at the drive in my hand, feeling the weight of what it meant. Inside this little device was the truth, signed, sealed, timestamped. Not even the CEO's daughter could rewrite it. As I drove home through the sleeping city, lights streaked past my windows like ghosts of data flowing through wires. Somewhere behind me in that glass tower downtown, Leela was probably tearing through firewalls trying to find what she couldn't control. And tomorrow, when she realized Witness Mode's logs were replicated across 12 silent backups, she'll understand she hadn't just made an enemy, she'd made a system that refused to forget. By morning, the building felt colder, the kind of cold that wasn't from the air vents but from tension itself. I arrived at 6:45 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else, sliding my badge past security with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The entire 12th floor was silent except for the low hum of servers behind glass. On the big calendar display in the hallway, one event glowed in red. Merger preview, 10 a.m., boardroom. It wasn't just another meeting, it was the day Leela Hart planned to stand in front of 12 executives and prove she could run her father's empire. It was also the day I planned to end that fantasy. I sat at my desk and plugged in the encrypted USB, the same one I'd carried like a secret pulse for days. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I decrypted the board package, every Witness Mode log, every falsified figure, every command she had executed from her device. I built a short presentation file, something sleek and harmless on the surface. I called it Forecast Integrity Review. It would run automatically the moment someone opened it. Leela wanted to use my work to validate her lies. I'd give her that, just not in the way she expected. At 9:55, people began filing into the boardroom, expensive shoes whispering across marble floors. Richard Hart stood near the window, speaking softly into his phone. His reflection looked older, stretched thin by pride and fear. Leela entered last, wearing a white blazer and a calm expression that fooled everyone but me. She glanced in my direction as if daring me to flinch. I didn't. Instead, I followed her inside and took a seat by the tech console near the projector. "We're live streaming this to Stratus Corp's evaluation team," she said smoothly. "They'll be watching from New York." Her voice carried confidence, but underneath it I heard the faint tremor of someone who'd slept 3 hours and lost control of too many things. The presentation began with numbers, graphs, projections, growth curves that looked too perfect to be real because they weren't. Every figure she showed had been inflated by her edits. Meridian's live data was screaming underneath, but she had muted the truth with pretty colors and buzzwords. "We've automated 95% of our client workflows," she said proudly, glancing at me as if expecting applause. "And Meridian's forecast models predict a 130% revenue increase by Q1. The board murmured approvingly. Someone actually clapped. I could see Richard's relief in the way his shoulders lowered. He wanted to believe her. He needed to. Then came the slide she didn't expect, my slide. It appeared automatically, a quiet switch hidden in the deck. The title read, "Witness Log Reconciliation." Leela froze. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. "Just a transparency check," I said, pretending innocence, "for audit compliance." The slide shifted. Video footage filled the 12-foot screen. Her message to me denying leave, then her false claim at the all-hands, the time-stamped server logs, the command sequence from her laptop that tried to delete data. Every sound, every image was crystal clear, captured by witness mode's forensic memory. The boardroom went silent except for the low hum of the projector. Richard's jaw tightened as the evidence unfolded. "Leela," he said slowly, "tell me this isn't real." She turned pale, her polished confidence cracking like glass. "She's manipulating it," she cried, pointing at me. "This is a setup." But Meridian's system interface appeared next, displaying its verification code, digital signatures, and metadata, proof that nothing was fabricated. I didn't have to say a word. The truth spoke in machine language. The chairman leaned forward, eyes cold. "Ms. Hart, these logs showed deliberate falsification of data and unauthorized access to financial systems. Do you deny this?" Leela opened her mouth, but no words came. The color drained from her face. Richard stood motionless, torn between a father's instinct and a CEO's duty. Finally, he said, "End the stream." The projector dimmed, but the damage was irreversible. I could feel the board's eyes on me now, not as an employee, but as the woman who had just exposed their heir apparent. "Mr. Hart," I said carefully, "the system integrity was restored. All records have been backed up to the regulatory node as required. There's no further risk." My voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes only after fire. Richard looked at me for a long time. He said, "Leave us." His tone wasn't anger, it was resignation. I walked out of the boardroom without looking back, the echo of their voices muffled behind the glass. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stepped into the elevator. The moment the doors closed, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My phone buzzed, an email notification. Subject, urgent, account suspension, notice. My corporate access had been revoked. Of course it had. I smiled anyway. I didn't need their system anymore. Witness Mode had already sent encrypted backups to the compliance regulator's secure drop overnight. Even if they wiped every trace of me from their servers, the truth was now immortal. Outside, Seattle's rain returned, soft and steady. I walked past the glass facade of the building, past the logo that once represented everything I believed in. Reporters were already gathering by the curb, tipped off by someone on the inside. I didn't stop. I just kept walking until the building's reflection dissolved behind me in the wet pavement. My phone buzzed again. Jonah this time. "It's all over the internal channels," his message read. "Board suspended Leela, Richard stepping down pending review. You're trending on LinkedIn as the engineer who exposed a billion-dollar lie." I stared at the screen, then typed back, "Not my story, just theirs." I reached the corner, stopped beneath a streetlight, and looked up at the clouds rolling in over the bay. Somewhere out there, Witness Mode's distributed nodes hummed quietly, alive and awake, waiting for new orders. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped by the system I built. I felt free because I knew exactly how it worked, and because they didn't. The city lights blurred through the drizzle, painting everything in silver and blue. I slipped the small USB from my pocket, the one that started it all, and held it up to the light. My reflection stared at me in the wet plastic. For a moment, I thought about tossing it into the gutter, letting it wash away. But no, some truths deserve to live. I slid it back into my pocket and turned toward the pier, the sound of gulls rising over the wind. The company would rebuild, maybe under a new name, maybe with new liars, but they'd all know one thing now. Systems remember. People forget. Machines don't. And I had built the best memory of all. 2 weeks later, the world had caught up with the truth. News outlets ran with headlines like Tech Harris exposed in $210 million data scandal and the algorithm that turned on its masters. The story burned across every feed, every forum, every news ticker. And though my name was buried beneath corporate statements and lawyer-crafted denials, people knew. They always know. The company scrambled to save face, firing half of senior management, announcing an ethics review, and leaking that Leela Hart was on indefinite leave pending investigation. No one said she'd been banned from the building, but the silence around her was proof enough. I watched it all unfold from a cafe near the pier, a quiet corner where no one looked twice at a woman typing behind a cracked laptop. I was supposed to feel triumphant, but what I felt was cleaner, sharper, like the moment after a storm when you realize the silence isn't peace, it's aftermath. Meridian's final build still pulsed on my screen, stripped of company logos, running independently on a private server I had set up offshore. It was no longer tied to quarterly reports or inflated forecasts. It just worked. Honest numbers, transparent systems, the way it was always meant to. My email pinged, a message from Jonah. Feds just subpoenaed the Hart Group's internal archives. Witness logs confirmed. You did it. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. You did it. Simple, final. But part of me knew it wasn't just me. It was the machine. It had learned what I taught it, to defend truth. I typed back a single sentence. Tell the team to walk away clean. Don't fight for scraps. Then I closed the thread. The cafe door opened and a gust of cold air followed a man in a dark overcoat, Richard Hart. I hadn't seen him since the day of the board meeting. His face looked smaller now, the confidence gone, replaced by something rawer. Age maybe, regret. He stood by my table, hat in hand. You always were the smartest one in the room, he said quietly. I didn't answer. You ruined my daughter, he continued. You didn't have to. I met his eyes, steady. I didn't ruin her. I exposed her. There's a difference. He nodded slowly, like a man realizing the argument was already lost. The board will recover, the company will survive. But her name? It's finished. That was her choice, I said. She gambled with numbers that didn't belong to her. You taught her that rules bend for the powerful. He exhaled, long and heavy. Maybe I did. Then he set something on the table. A small envelope with the company seal. Your severance. Double what legal approved. Walk away, Evelyn. Don't let this define you. I didn't touch it. It already defined you, and that's enough. He hesitated, then turned and left without another word. The door closed behind him, and I felt the weight of a legacy collapsing quietly in the distance. That evening, I walked along the waterfront as the sun bled out behind the skyline. Seattle shimmered in gold and gray, the kind of light that makes everything look fragile and important at the same time. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I answered. Evelyn Hart? The voice was male, professional, government. This is Agent Delaney with the SEC. We'd like to talk about Meridian's predictive framework. You built something unique. I smiled faintly. I built something honest. Exactly. That's why we're calling. We could use it. I looked out over the water, the reflection of the city trembling across the surface. Send the details, I said, then ended the call before he could thank me. Back at my apartment, I sat by the window with my laptop open, watching the cold scroll down the screen. Meridian's log systems had been quiet since the exposure. No warnings, no breaches, no edits. Just data, clean and uncorrupted. I thought of Leela somewhere, hiding behind lawyers and NDAs, still believing she could rewrite reality with charm and wealth. Maybe she'll never understand that the real betrayal wasn't personal, it was systemic. She tried to own what couldn't be owned. Truth doesn't bend, it just waits. A storm rolled in after midnight, wind pressing against the glass. I transferred Meridian's final build to a new server node, one with no ties to any corporate network, then closed my laptop for the first time in weeks. The rain sounded almost like applause against the window. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closing, letting the hum of the city fade into nothing. My mother called the next morning. Her voice was stronger now, clearer. She said, I saw you on the news, baby. Did what you had to do. Yeah, I said softly. It's over. She paused. You sound tired. Just done, I said, and she laughed, a small, proud sound that made everything worth it. Later that afternoon, I took the USB drive, the original one, and walked down to the pier. The sky was clearing, gulls cutting across the wind. I stood at the edge, the cold wood creaking beneath my boots, and looked down at the water. The drive felt light now, just a relic. I turned it over in my hand once, then tossed it into the bay. It vanished with barely a splash, swallowed by the gray. For a moment, I thought I'd feel regret. But what I felt was freedom. The truth was already out there, replicated, indestructible. I didn't need to carry it anymore. As I walked back towards the city, the world felt wider, quieter. I didn't have a job, a title, or a company, but I had my name, and that was enough. In a world built on deception, keeping your own truth intact was the only kind of revenge that mattered. And as the skyline glowed against the fading light, I knew that somewhere, in every line of code I've ever written, the machine still remembered the same thing I did, that no system, no empire, no dynasty can rewrite the moment it's caught telling a lie.